So we are back for part 2 here, talking about the male Seiyuu artists that you need to check, really, because they are amazing, and especially if you are just starting out, they are an amazing starting point in your journey as a fan, and from here you can actually check so many amazing artists that you will discover, both indie, both in massive music labels, as well as those Seiyuu artists that may never make a solo debut, but they have amazing performances into the music. So I hope this is another episode filled with awesome content for you to check, and 3 more artists that you need to give it a try and enjoy. So let's kick off this episode of Seiyuu Lounge. Welcome to Seiyuu Lounge. I am your host Vanessa, and in this episode let's talk about the must-listen artists if you are getting into male Seiyuu. This is part 2 of 3. In the last episode we talked about Yu Mochida, Mamoru Miyano and Shota. In this episode let's talk about 3 other artists. The first 3 in the past episode were all about pop and R&B and some EDM music. In this episode though, we are going to cover Seiyuu artists that are more about pop rock and acoustic rock. These are music genres that are fairly easy to get into, especially pop rock, because you have the pop lyrics with the rock sound, or sometimes you have rock lyrics with a more approachable pop sound going on. Or you have acoustic rock, which is not as heavy as rock music fully fledged can be, and it's still enjoyable. So let's dive into those Seiyuu artists that I recommend as well. Well, first off is Kentito. You may be already familiar with his singing, you may be familiar with his rapping in the Hypnosis Mic franchise, you may be familiar with the fact that he actually creates music for other artists and projects using his original pen name, which he has since the times he was a Vocaloid producer. Kentito is an amazing singer, an even more impressive musician, because he writes, or sometimes he writes his own music. At least you can understand that when he's working with Umike, he does write the music for them and plays some of the instruments, namely the guitars or drums at times. So he's a multi-instrumentalist when it comes to that. He can play the piano, drums and guitar. And he sings. He's really amazing in that regard. And when it comes to the singing, he has a unique singing tone, because even among tenors I feel that there's a certain raspiness to his tenor voice that no other tenor among the ones that I'm going to talk about, which mostly are tenors. I feel, looking at my list, the only singer that is not necessarily a tenor is going to appear in the next episode. So most of the singers among male Seiyuu are tenors, but it is also because tenor is the most common range among male singers. So when it comes to Kentito's voice, I find his voice really unique, and the way that he sings, I feel he has a unique flair of someone that should have been a singer full-time, but instead became a voice actor. At least that's my feeling when it comes to the way he performs. Is so professional, crazy quality since the start. And you wouldn't even, especially when he debuted, most people weren't even imagining him singing or how he would sing. I wouldn't expect him to belt that high. I wouldn't expect him to sound that angelic when he goes for those high notes in falsetto. I wouldn't. And when it comes to the belting, the way he breathes, everything, how he delivers every single thing in his performances, I was not expecting him to have such a high level, for example. And the way he sounds, sometimes he can go really low in his vocal range. Other times he can go insanely high. The insanely high being extremely high, I'm not kidding. And for example, some people coming across Kentito just because of his work in the Hypnosis Mic franchise will be surprised when they dive into his music, because he has citypop as the main music genre, which is completely different. And this is a big reason why I chose Kentito to be a follow-up to Shota in the previous episode. He has a sort of a danceable sound with citypop leading the way. He has plenty of pop rock as well, and some acoustic rock. So he mixes all those 3 music genres, creating a really interesting amalgamation of 3 mature approaches to music. In this case, pop and rock at the core, basically, of his sound. But I would say Most of his music is with a synthwave city pop vibe, so he mixes both, as his sound is quite danceable and addictive, but still has that retro vibe and a ton of polish that usually pop music doesn't have. Let's say pop music is overly polished to the point that it sounds overly produced, too perfect at times. His music doesn't have that. It has that polish that you would have in the 80s and the 90s. And I find that more enjoyable, in which things aren't 100% perfect when it comes to the sound. I like this a lot. And I like the idea of having a Seiyuu artist that can come forward and say, I perform city pop music at times, I perform synthwave at times, I perform some pop rock with some jazz influences at times as well. And he can actually perform rock music really well. He's extremely versatile when it comes to being a solo artist, and you will find yourself having a ton of fun with his music, because Kentito not only is an amazing singer, he's a really good lyricist, and he's also a really good composer, and his music is a ton of fun to listen to. He may not get the most attention in his music, and you will notice, for example, if you go to a streaming platform, his music doesn't get many streams in comparison with some artists that I mentioned in the previous episode. But his music is amazing. I feel that his music is really worth your time. He's one of my favorite singers among male Seiyuu. I do follow his career quite closely because I enjoy his music a ton, and I would recommend anyone to get into his music, especially if you are getting into male Seiyuu artists and, for example, you are not that big of a fan of rock music, but you want to start somewhere. You want to try to ease into the music genre and try to find some easy listening approaches to rock music, for example. Kentito provides that to you and more, because you will find the fun, entertaining things about city pop and sometimes synthwave in there, so it will be familiar to you if you are a fan of pop music. It will be fun, but it will sound slightly dated, because city pop is a music genre that proliferated in the late 70s, early 80s in Japan, and it is a music genre that is unique to Japan. Please listen to the way he performs this, because it is mind-blowing, that retro futuristic sound that he brings to his music at times. And then, of course, you have the pop rock, the acoustic rock, that is a trademark of his, even in the work that he does with Umike, a group that he has alongside Yoshiki Nakajima. He does have those roots with the acoustic pop rock, but he also brings city pop and synthwave at times to his music. He sings like an angel, he's extremely versatile, has a wide vocal range as a tenor. He has tons to deliver to you that you don't even know what to expect at times. I've said countless times before that I've been surprised by his performances, and especially in his solo work, I've been really pleasantly surprised with him. He had one of the most solid solo debuts ever by a male Seiyuu, and really, I'm not kidding when I say that he's one of the biggest talents that we have right now performing as a solo artist. So do check Kentito's music if you can. Next up is Shugo Nakamura, and if you are a big fan of acoustic pop rock or acoustic rock, or you want a more easy listening approach to pop rock music or rock music, let's say, Shugo Nakamura is your choice. His music is extremely bright, uplifting, warm. I would say his music feels like a really warm hug at times, and he captures that energy that he has, the energy from Okinawa in his music. It is really passionate, warm, full, and I feel that he has a sound that many will not pay attention to, because his sound is cozy, his music is not overly exciting, he's not creating music for the dance floor, but his music, mixing acoustic rock with some jazz at times, it is so much fun, for me at least. And I feel that if you are trying to get into a music genre and you don't want to be overwhelmed with something really aggressive that will throw you off, or lyrics that are overly complex that you need to actually stop to study them to understand what is being said, I feel that Shugo Nakamura is a really good, balanced performer, because the lyrics are easy to understand. I would say the lyrics are mostly pop-driven, they are catchy, they are fun, they are not overly complex. You understand right away what he's talking about and what he's referring to. His music is really welcoming in terms of the sound. Usually, it is all in a warm tone, so you will find yourself with a massive smile on your face when you listen to Shugo Nakamura's music. He doesn't have many songs to his name. He does have a couple of CDs so far. Just like Kentito, his career is not as long as some of the artists that I've talked about or mentioned in the previous episode, and especially not in comparison with the ones that I'm going to talk in the next episode. But the music that he has already for you available to check and have fun with is already well worth your time. You will find his music on streaming platforms without any problem whatsoever, and you will have a ton of fun. Shugo Nakamura's voice is quite unique, I would say, and especially when he goes to the high note. Usually when you go really high, the notes will sound extremely ethereal and clear. He doesn't have that ethereal vibe to his voice. I wouldn't say his voice is angelic when he goes to the high notes, which is something that, for example, I say about Kentito. He has a really oddly angelic voice when he goes to the really high notes. Not that he doesn't pack a lot of power, because he has a ton of power and a ton of emotion is in his performance, but those high notes that he delivers usually sound fragile. You want to treasure them. It is something really unique about the way that he goes to those high notes, the way that he belts. And you notice this more, I wouldn't say necessarily in his solo work, but for example, if you listen to his performances with Quell in the THTFHQ franchise, you will instantly notice that it can go insanely high alongside some of the best singers among male Seiyuu, and you will be left with goosebumps all over. Is amazing. He can match the energy and the quality of the singer singing alongside him, which is something that some Seiyuu cannot even do. One thing that may be interesting for you to understand is that Shugo Nakamura actually started his career wanting to be a solo artist. He didn't want to become a voice actor initially. So he has done the reverse. He wanted to be a solo artist, but eventually went and became a voice actor. But he always impressed everyone with the way that he sings, because he sings amazingly. And he plays guitar as well, and he writes his own lyrics. So he's a full-fledged singer-songwriter when it comes to his music. He's really, really passionate about it. And as you may have noticed, we are getting gradually into the singer-songwriters, and we started with the ones that are performing lyrics written for them. Now we are talking about the ones that write their own material, which adds a different layer to the performances. I feel always that a song connects much better with you if the singer performing the song is also the same person who wrote the lyrics. I feel that that's the way the songs will connect the best, because it is your own feelings that you are trying to express with your performance. And that connects much better because those are your experiences, your feelings, and your impressions and opinions. And the way that you are going to express those is completely different from trying to understand what someone wrote and someone tried to imbue those lyrics with in terms of the emotion. So you need to do an extra job to try to understand that and try to enhance the lyrics when you feel that they don't carry the emotion that they say they wanted to carry, for example. When it comes to singer-songwriters like Shugo Nakamura, he's actually quite blessed with the fact that Lantis let him write his own lyrics since the start of his career. Usually Lantis doesn't let their solo artists write their own music when they start their career. So props to Shugo Nakamura for having negotiated a contract in which he can actually have creative freedom to the point that he can write his own music and lyrics, and Lantis was okay with that since the very start. His debut has songs with lyrics by him, which is rare. I must say, this is extremely rare among debuting solo artists, especially among male Seiyuu. You don't often find them writing lyrics to their music in the debut CD. Sometimes as a special they write one song, and I'm not even saying writing the song, they are writing the lyrics to one song. But in this case, Shugo Nakamura wrote everything. So that's impressive. That's something that needs to be put into the spotlight, because he has been writing his own material since the start. And he does so with a ton of passion. You can tell by the way that he performs on stage, by the way that he conveys those emotions, and how uniquely his is the music. Because you listen to it and you can feel his energy there. And I find that extremely entertaining and really endearing to find in someone's music, that not only you find their signature style, that uniqueness in terms of the composition, but you also can feel their energy, their vibe in their music. So Shugo Nakamura is a sort of a vibe style of solo artist. His acoustic pop rock sound is really really warm. You will feel like you are at a campfire and you are having fun alongside as someone plays the acoustic guitar. It's a ton of fun. When it goes to the jazz music, it's extremely classy. It does a really interesting thing because most solo artists that basically visit or use pop mixed with jazz usually tend to use jazz as a way to sound mature or to sound sexy. But in this case, Shugo Nakamura actually brings that to sound classy. Not necessarily because he wants to sound mature or sexy. His music sounds mature since the start. I feel that even his approach to pop rock music is not too youthful in the way that he does, but the way that he brings jazz into his music is actually to add a layer of class to his music. So yeah, he's an amazing artist that you should check for sure. And to wrap up this episode, we have Shoya Chiba. He has a couple of CDs, of course, but he debuted last year. So out of all the artists that I'm bringing into these 3 episodes about the artists that you should check, especially among male Seiyuu, he has the least amount of music for you to check. But on a plus side, since he has only started his solo career last year, you still are in a perfect place to get into his music because you won't be overwhelmed with a ton of music that you need to get into to understand the latest release or to enjoy the latest release. So this is a good thing. Chiba has been one of the biggest surprises among male Seiyuu, in my opinion. He has a really interesting voice. Mind you, at the start, I didn't understand why he was performing in some 2D music projects because he didn't sound anything impressive. But slowly I started to understand the thing. First, that when Seiyuu perform in 2D music projects, sometimes they have instructions that they need to follow. Some of those instructions may even say they are really new to music, so you are not going to perform these in full quality or with full capacity. You will do these as if you were a rookie. So sometimes his singing style is a bit weird for 2D music projects. Of course, that has changed over time, especially as he's been or joined a couple of 2D music projects in which he actually can sound really good and it is demanded of him to have a really high quality. But at the start, for example, with High Joker in the Side M franchise, I never really understood the fascination with his voice until I actually saw him perform live and play the guitar live. And that was a turning point for me that made me reassess what I thought about him as a performer. Of course, he has done a ton of things when it comes to performing music for 2D music projects. He's one of the most sought after Seiyuu when it comes to 2D music projects. Actually, in a way, most of the Seiyuu I'm talking about in these 3 episodes, minus Shotawoi and Mamoru Miyano, who barely are in any 2D music projects, they are mostly coveted for many 2D music projects. So in this case, Shoya Chiba has a really interesting tenor voice. It can go high. I wouldn't say he's one of the best singers among male Seiyuu yet, because he has a ton to show, he has a ton to grow, but he has flashes of genius in his performances. And this makes me incredibly excited about what he can deliver in the future as he matures, improves, and really settles in a style that he actually is comfortable with and that he likes. I feel he has a ton of potential in that regard, and I feel that maybe we can have something really awesome happening here in the future. Hopefully, we will have. But right now, as he is quite exciting. I would say when he released The Blessing, his first EP last year, Blessing was instantly one of my favorite albums of the year. First, because he was bold as heck. No Seiyuu artist debuting will release a full album or an EP. That's too bold. That's an excess of confidence there, which may fire back because some artists, when they are debuting, they don't have control over their music, their sound, and mostly some music labels are trying to push them to perform some things that they may not even enjoy. In this case, Shoya Chiba was actually in the background choosing what he was going to perform, and he actually wrote lyrics to the opening and the last track in the album, which is interesting because he wanted to start and finish with something uniquely his. I will say out of all the artists that I spoke up until now, is the one that consistently performs rock music. So he has some instances of dance music and R&B in his repertoire so far, which is not a massive repertoire, but rock music is actually the brunt of his work. And I love this a whole lot because when he joined King Records, the same music label in which Mamoru Miyano, Shota Oi, and Yu Mochida are, I was worried that he would end up going the same route and that King Records would say he's also going to perform pop music because that's what sells at this music label and that's what most male Seiyuu at this music label do. Thankfully, Shoya Chiba actually got the opportunity to perform pop rock and rock music more so than dance or pop music. Of course, he still has an R&B tune here and there and has a pop tune here and there, but mostly his repertoire is rock music. So if you come from Kentito, who has a really interesting mix between dance and rock, and then you go to Shugo Nakamura, who has a really warm pop rock sound, and it is mostly rock what he performs, then you arrive at Shoya Chiba, and you are getting a really robust pop rock sound that is exciting, full of energy, and it packs that excitement that he usually brings to everything that he works in. So that's another thing that I like a whole lot. When it comes to writing his own lyrics, he's actually pretty good, and for someone that was just debuting, he already sounded like someone who had been in the industry performing as a solo artist professionally for at least 5 years. He made one of the best, if not the best, solo debut in the past decade. And I'm not kidding. And in the past decade, Yu Mochida, Makoto Furukawa, and Soma Saito also debuted. So this is a big praise that I'm bringing here because Shoya Chiba's debut EP, Blessing, sounded much better than any of those debut CDs by 3 of the best singers among male Seiyuu. So that's already a really good show of how confident, but also he matched the confidence that he brought because first I thought this is really bold to debut with an EP. It may backfire because if he is going to have one song per music genre, that's going to sound like a mess. But actually, it's a really concise album. His performances were really, really strong. He showcased a ton of his vocal range. He was confident throughout. And usually a problem that you find when artists make their solo debut is that they are still threading what is comfortable for them or not. They are not really sure about their singing style because they have yet to find something that they are really comfortable with. They also are not that comfortable with their technique, so they are not risking too much to not sound bad. But Shoya Chiba went all out, and I love this because it was amazing what he delivered. And in subsequent CDs, he actually matched that quality. At times he fumbled a little bit, but he sounds consistently good, which is something that I fully appreciate. So yeah, when it comes to really good quality, entry level, easy listening pop rock music, Shoya Chiba is a good entry level, but also you will find emo rock here, post rock influences, and these are really music genres that may be a bit more darker than you should or would expect, but I feel that they match a lot Shoya Chiba, especially when he talks about the type of music that he enjoys listening to. He usually listens to much heavier music, so his music in comparison is fairly bright, but when he dives into that emo rock, post-rock influences, he actually shines the most, in my opinion. So yeah, he's an amazing singer, he has a really awesome vocal range. You will find him sounding more confident than ever as of late. He made a really confident solo debut. If you start listening to his music from the very first CD, Blessing, you will understand what I'm talking about. That's a really strong debut album that up until it was released, only Kentito had a really outstanding solo debut and Shugo Nakamura as well. So those 3 are in this episode. They had the 3 best solo debuts in the last decade. They are all 3 in this episode, which is kind of funny because I didn't organize them in that sense, but now that I'm talking, I understood that they had another connection between them, so that's fun. But yeah, this was all that I had to say about Shugo Nakamura, Kentito, and Shoya Chiba. 3, I would say, really welcoming takes on pop rock music and rock itself, which will lead you to the next episode in which we are talking about rock music and full-on jazz. Now, this was a really packed episode with tons of interesting Seiyuu artists. I feel that you should check them out, especially if you are getting into rock music or you enjoy rock music, but you don't want it to be overly complex or overly heavy. You have really interesting music. Most of their music actually feels like the type of music that you would listen if you went on a road trip. I feel it is the type of music that you want to listen to when you go on a journey. It is at least the vibe that I get from their music. Out of these Seiyuu, I'm mostly curious right now about Shoya Chiba because he has the most potential to grow. The other artists, Kentito and Shugo Nakamura, they already have grown a lot. They have tons of years of experience as singers. Shoya Chiba not so much, which leads me to think that he has more potential to grow even more than he already has grown. So there's that here. Of course, I love all three. I listen to their music quite frequently. It's low stakes, it is fun, warm at times, stylish at others, and it can go really emotional as well. So I feel they have a really good balance between the accessibility of pop music and the deep, raw emotions that rock can bring to the table. They are really that balanced. So in this episode, I wanted to bring them. I feel that they are really worth your time once again. And if you have available time, or if you are getting into male Seiyuu and you want to actually gradually getting into something a bit more complex, I feel that you need to go through them to feel more comfortable and then dive into the more complex stuff that almost needs active research to understand what is going on. You may already be under the impression that I'm going to talk about a specific voice actor in the next episode, and you may be right. If you follow the podcast, you will know by now who I'm going to talk about in the next episode. I left 3 of the most complex Seiyuu artists to that episode, so that's going to be hopefully not a gigantic episode, but I feel that I'm going to talk a lot about them, which is going to be crazy. So yeah, I would love to know if you are a fan of any of these Seiyuu, especially if you are already a veteran fan of Seiyuu music, which are the songs that you like the most from Kentito or Shugo Nakamura or Shoya Chiba, and recommend those in the comments for everyone who may be checking this episode and may be trying to get into male Seiyuu music and don't know where to start. They want to start with the best songs or the most recommended songs. So if you can share those recommendations in the comments, that would be awesome. Also, if you enjoyed this episode and you are not subscribed yet, you can subscribe to the channel. More content like this drops every single week. Sometimes there is viewable episodes in which I bring either a guest or I appear to talk about an album. And that's a ton of fun around here. As well, if you are on YouTube, please leave it a like if you enjoyed this episode and you are listening to it up until now. And of course, if you are on a streaming platform and you have some free time to do anything regarding giving a review to this podcast, please leave a review. It helps a ton to get more eyes and more ears on this podcast and make more people aware that Seiyuu artists actually exist. Because as we may have talked about a couple of episodes ago when I brought my friend Kotaro to the podcast, male Seiyuu or Seiyuu music is not even something that in Japan people are that into. So it is a really small bubble. So the more people know about these podcasts that are fans of male Seiyuu artists or Seiyuu, the better. Of course, thank you very much for watching this episode, and I'll see you guys in the next one, which will be part 3 of 3 of these mini feature about the must-listen Seiyuu artists that you need to get into. Thank you so much for watching this episode, and I'll see you guys in the next one.